Welcome back to Joe Stunner Boxing. I wanted to talk a little bit about the card that's on August the 3rd in LA. And this is, again, part of Riyadh season. Our friend, the excellent Turkey, slinging his money around again, God bless him. And it's headlined by Bud Crawford and Madrimov for Madrimov's 154-pound belt. Good matchup, no problem with that at all. But the undercard has got some very interesting matchups on it also. It's not one of those headliner and then the also rounds. There's some very intriguing fights on it. I'll probably go through some of them individually, but you've got Andy Cruz against Antonio Moran, David Morrell, who, as you know, if you've watched this channel before, I am very, very high on indeed, against Radovic Kaladzig. That's for a light heavyweight belt, actually, one of the vacant belts. Andy Ruiz, against Jarrell Miller, which is an intriguing matchup, battle of the fatties. I was going to say I expect Ruiz to win that, but you just don't know. Ruiz is... I think Ruiz, since the second Joshua fight, has been semi-retired. He just got those big bags, the two Joshua fights, and he's been enjoying himself sitting on the sofa, munching Ben & Jerry's, you know. That's ice cream, by the way. That's not a euphemism. Then you got Pitbull Cruz and Jose Valenzuela. Good fight. But the one that springs out, and I think it does for me, and it has done for a lot of people, I've mentioned this, is Martin Bakole and Jared Anderson. Because you've got the young gun, which is Anderson, against the older, but nevertheless more experienced, rather grizzled and very, very tough Bakole. I say tough. Now, I'm going to go into this in a little bit more detail because a lot of people seem to be saying, oh, Bakole, yes, Anderson's bitten off more than he can chew. I got doubts about this. Can Bakole beat Anderson without a shadow of a doubt? But this idea that he's going to just beat up the young boy and take him to places he hasn't been to, yes, that's a danger, but I think people are being a little bit too... are they overlooking Anderson? I don't know about overlooking him, but they're certainly not giving him enough credit. I'm not seeing enough scenarios where people are saying, oh, yeah, Anderson can win this. He can look good doing this. And I think he can. Because if you look at Bakole, he does have a defeat on his record to Michael Hunter, who at the time was coming up from cruiserweight. And that was in 2018. So that was not quite 5 years ago. I think it was October 2018. He got stopped in the 10th and final round. And he did suffer an injured right shoulder, which his trainer always talks about. But, okay, I didn't like what I saw in terms of attitude, and I thought there was something missing in that fight. Now, people say, oh, yeah, that was 5 years ago. He came back. He beat Marius Vac at the time, that was the following year after the shoulder was repaired. And that was over in Poland. He stopped him in 8 rounds. He's also beaten people like Kevin Johnson, who he stopped in 5 rounds. Johnson took that fight on, I think, a week's notice, not even that. And he was suffering from jet lag at the time. So it was a rare stoppage defeat for Johnson. Sergey Kuzmin. Now, this is another one where Bakole won a 10-round decision. I thought Kuzmin clearly won that fight. I really did, and I thought it was a shame because I think that, Kuzmin at the time was 15 wins, 1 defeat. He's now 19-2, and he's 36 now. But he's a guy who's sort of underachieved, and kind of like Ajit Kabayel was this time last year. People were saying, he wasted a lot of his peak years. He had more ability than people were letting on. I mean, he lost also to Michael Hunter over 12 rounds. That was a points decision. And he hasn't beaten anyone of any great shakes at all. His level has sort of been Amir Mansour. I think that was a no contest. And then he had a 4-round stoppage over David Price at some point. Joey DeWecco, that was a points decision. I think it was either a split decision or a majority decision, which doesn't bode well. And, he's beaten the usual suspects like earlier on in his career, Konstantin Ehrlich, but if you go, he's turned pro at 2014, so he's been a pro for 10 years, Kuzmin. But I think he's underachieved, and I think it's kind of a shame that he didn't get that decision over Bakole, which I thought he deserved because perhaps his career would have pushed on. Now, Bakole himself is listed at 31. He looks a lot older than 31 to me, but you never know. I mean, these African lads, He's one of those big, tough African fellas. I mean, he's in Scotland. He's trained by Billy, you know who, Scottish fella. He's originally from the Democratic Republic of Congo. And he's 6'6", big, muscular fella. And in fairness to him, I mean, he did beat Tony Yoka over in France. That was a 10-round majority decision when Yoka was undefeated. And he looked good against the remnants of Carlos Takam in his last fight. That was a retirement over 4 rounds. So even though he has looked imposing, I mean, he beat a guy called Shevadutsky, Ihor Shevadutsky. I can't remember where he's from. I think that was over in Poland as well. That was a 3-round stoppage, and that guy was undefeated, Shevadutsky. But I don't see Bakole as a top tier. I mean, an absolute top 3 heavyweight, which is unusual because he's very, very highly ranked with a couple of the ruling bodies. Very highly ranked, too highly ranked, in my opinion. So he's a good fighter. Yeah, but I don't see him as. I don't get it. Oh, you know, he's 20 wins, 15 KOs, 1 defeat, the stoppage to Michael Hunter. But I don't see him as being an absolute red-hot favourite against Gerald Anderson, because Anderson, undefeated in 17, 15 KOs. He's only 24. He's a little bit short. He's 6'4", I think. He calls himself the real big baby. And the knock against Anderson is that some of his out-of-the-ring activities have been a little bit suspect. He's been arrested and for, I think, DUIs and sending the police on a wild goose chase. And he was flying. He was knocking everyone out in, I think, the second round. He had about 3 or 4, maybe 4 or 5 second-round knockouts against, you know, lower-level guys. He beat Jerry Forrest, who, as we know, gave Zile Zhang a little runaround, tough fight. George Arias, he knocked him out in 3 rounds. Then he bumped into Charles Martin. And over 10 rounds, it was a unanimous decision, but Martin shook him. Martin was down in the 3rd round, but he shook him in the final round. He shook Anderson. And he then dropped down. He fought Andrei Rudenko, stopped him in 5. That was a drop down, really. Rudenko had a kind of glossy-ish record, but 35-6. But so it looked good on paper. But a drop down from Charles Martin, I'd say Martin's probably better than people remember him because of that Joshua blowout. And his last fight, Anderson, he didn't look good at all. He looked really boring. It was a really boring fight. He won a 10-round decision over Riyad Mary, who had also beaten Tony Yoka on points. So the recent form, in terms of recent form, I would say that, yes, Bakole he's got the inside track. I mean, the Riyad Mary fight for Anderson was in April of this year. So he's at least fought recently, and 10 rounds looking dull. At least he got that 10 rounds under his belt. When they face each other in August, Bakole won't have fought since last October. So he would have been out of the ring longer. But in terms of recent form, yeah, I go with it. I go with the idea that Bakole has looked better. It's also worth mentioning that Bakole against Takam was out of shape, even though he got the job done. But Takam had seen some better days. I mean, that was over in Riyadh. He stopped Takam in 4 rounds, beat the hell out of him. But at the time, Bakole was weighing 300 pounds or minus about half a pound, 299.5 pounds. He was a big overweight lump. And he kind of got the job done against Takam over sheer brute strength and force. Takam can only fight one way, which is coming forward. That suited Bakole fine. So I think Bakole will have to come in he'll have to come in physically far better than he was. He is a big lad. He's a 275 pound, 265 to 275 sort of fighter these days. He has weighed lower earlier on in his career when he was younger. He was 260, 250 something against Sergey Kuzmin, I think. He was very low in weight. And certainly he was in the 250s when he lost to Michael Hunter. So he probably is a 270 sort of fighter, but 300 pounds, no, that's way too much. And this is going to be a tough fight. we don't know yet, according to Boxer, we don't know whether it's going to be over 10 rounds or 12 rounds, but we certainly know that Anderson, even though there is a question mark over his motivation in boxing, he's going to be I think it'll be Bakole's biggest test. Certainly his biggest test since Michael Hunter, who himself has kind of flitted away a lot of his prime years. But at the time, he was just coming up from cruiserweight. He had a lot of ambition, and he deservedly beat Bakole. It wasn't just the injury that beat Bakole; it was the good performance by Michael Hunter. And I do get the impression that Bakole does have a slight air of the bully about him, and if you do hurt him and push him back and stand up to him, and sort of box fight him, hit hurtful punches, but move a lot, make him fight at that higher pace. Certainly, if he comes in anything less than fit, if this is going to be over 12 rounds for one of those Mickey Mouse belts, I think Bakole might have his work cut out, and I would favour Anderson to win. I'm not going to make a prediction now because it's too early, but it is an intriguing heavyweight fight, very intriguing fight, and that's a good card. That whole LA card is very good. Turki Al-Sheikh is branching out into other territories now, as we probably thought he would. He'll be bringing his money to Britain for Wembley, probably Wembley Stadium fight. That'd be great. A Wembley Stadium card. It's going to LA. Wouldn't surprise me if those long arms with their huge amounts of money spread all over the world, Mexico, Europe, you name it, Japan. Yeah, good days for boxing. Good days for boxing, no doubt. So what do you think of this card? I left something on the community page, like a list of the fights, little picture with a list of the fights, little poster. And a lot of you I know are very keen on the card. I think you think it's great. I think it's great too. But what do you specifically think about Bakole and Anderson? I know a lot of commentators are saying Bakole's got this. He's definitely the red hot favourite. I'm not convinced. I'm not convinced at all. So let me know what you think. Give me your opinions. Do you agree with me? Disagree with me? What's your take on things? Thank you for your time as always. Please subscribe to the channel if it takes a second to hit the subscribe button, and you're doing us a big favour. Much appreciated. And also hit the like button as well. We've got plenty more. There's loads of videos for you to watch. We've got plenty more to come. It's your channel as well as mine. If you didn't watch, it would be an echo chamber. That's no use to me. It's no use to anyone. All right, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your time. I will speak to you soon, and bye for now.